Viewer discretion is advised.
And welcome to Intel Studios Veterans Matter broadcast, the first live stream broadcast strictly for veterans and active duty military in the tri-state New Jersey, Delaware, and Pennsylvania areas. Veterans Matter is produced by Al Zentmeyer and Jerry Fernier and is an Intel Studios production. And now, live from our studio in Northfield, New Jersey, your host, Veterans Advocate Mike Merlino. And good afternoon, and we welcome all of our audience, and it is our hope that today's broadcast will assist or enlighten you, and at the very least, let you know that there is help for you if needed. If you want friends to participate in our broadcast, they need to go to our website, veteransmatternj.com. That's all together, veteransmatternj.com. Click on the Our Show circle, then click on subscribe. You can also go directly to YouTube, hit the search button, type in Intel Studios live stream, and then scroll down the options until you see Veterans Matter. Our phone lines are available throughout the broadcast, and I'll let our audience know when we begin taking calls. That phone number is 609-798-4475. That's 609-798-4475. And please be patient as the calls are answered in the order they appear. If anybody misses a phone number, an email address, please just email me, irskill@aol.com, and I'll get you any information that you may have missed. And now I'd like to introduce a good friend of mine who's no stranger to Veterans Matter and has been on our show in the past when we were in a public or private radio forecast. And I would just like to take this time to introduce United States Army and Vietnam veteran Paul Giunta. Paul, welcome to Veterans Matter.
Good afternoon, Mike and Al, and thank you for inviting us here today.
So I'd like to invite someone who, although is no stranger to what we do here, has never been on the show before. I'd like to introduce Paul's bride, Alice Giunta. Alice, welcome to Veterans Matter.
Thank you, Mike.
Guys, this is going to be a real fun show for me because the relationship I have with Paul, we go back many years before the existence of the American Legion Riders out of Post 352, back to when I joined the Rolling Thunder Chapter 4 here in the state of New Jersey. Those years, it really, Paul, I got to thank you a lot because your leadership during that time taught me a lot. It taught me things about riding with a motorcycle group. I had ridden since 1974. Here I was 30 years later. It was the first time I ever rode with a group, and it's different, really different. And when you were there, Farina was president when I first joined, and you became president, and Rich Fiedler took over. And then things went downhill from there. Yeah. But, one of the things that was great that I really loved that you guys had set up was the way you used road captains back then. Mm-hmm. And I'll never forget riding in the back because that's where the new guys are supposed to be. They're supposed to be, correct. Until you get confident riding with your group, that's where you belong. And I remember Steve Subin, who was another Vietnam veteran, a retired Atlantic City fireman. He was riding in the back, and I could just remember, and he would come up to me and he'd say, Mike, this is the way I would do this, and right. It just built confidence in you. Sometimes you get the feeling when I ride in a large group today, I don't always feel that everybody's real confident.
On the same page, right?
Excuse me?
On the same page,
Right.
You know, it takes a while of practice, and you got to know your surroundings, what's going on, and sometimes the road captains come up, and if you're in La La Land, all of a sudden they're flashing by, and you like, oh my God, you know. But today we've worked out a great system.
Yeah, it actually, if people would pay attention, you could really end up in an enjoyable situation. If you don't, riding can be dangerous.
Oh,
And
yes.
and you guys know, you spend your winter in a state where riding a motorcycle is probably one of the most dangerous things you can do today, in Florida,
Yes.
correct? You know, and here it's getting worse and worse all the time. Paul, let me take you back to, I have your bio here, and it's really quite interesting, especially in the beginning. You and Alice were preparing a wedding in October of 1965. And you get your draft notice a month before this. What was that like? Tell me.
Well, what do you think, Alice? You want to tell them how you felt?
Actually, we knew you were going to be drafted, but you got your notice for a physical, and that was 2 days after we got married. So we had planned a honeymoon to Florida, and it wound up going overnight in New York.
New York.
And we saw the Pope. He happened to be there. What Pope was that?
Pope Pius the 12th, I think.
All right.
And that was the highlight of our honeymoon.
Yeah, seeing the Pope.
Yeah. And then we got married in October, and he left for basic training in November.
Yeah, it's kind of November, December. I remember that. I didn't have, and then that. Oh, and then I took. Then I went to Fort Dix for a couple weeks, and then they gave us, I think it was a 2-week leave over Christmas before I had to report back to Fort Dix. So, but we had talked it over when I got my draft notice. A lot of my friends were going out and joining the Air Force and the Army Reserves, so they wouldn't have to go to Vietnam. And we talked it over, and Alice said, look, go and get it over with, because when you come back, you still had 4 years or 2 years or whatever it was of reserve duty. So, and of course, me being kind of looking forward to going into business with my father, I said, let's get it over. And then what happened?
And then you went to Maryland for training.
Yeah.
I left my job and did a 6-week leave of absence, went down with him because we were newlyweds, and we had a home. We had bought a little house in Summers Point, and I couldn't afford to keep the house on his private's pay. My mortgage and my taxes came to $98 a month, but he was making $120 a month. So
Right.
we just couldn't do it. So I rented the house, and I wanted to move in with my parents, but my sister was home with my parents with 2 children. Her husband was in Vietnam. So
Yeah.
I had to move in with Paul's parents, and I lived with them the whole time he was in Vietnam. And she taught me how to cook.
Now, getting back to the house, my parents gave us the house for a wedding gift, and it was a 2-bedroom rancher in Summers Point. And I forget how much the house was, but they had to put $1,500 down to get this house, and we took over not a VA loan, I forget what it was called back then, but we took over the loan from the person that owned it for $1,500. We had a house. But like Alice said, it was tough when I was going to support that kind of mortgage of, what was it, $85 or $95 a month.
Now, Paul, you said something interesting. I never heard it before, but you could have gone into the Army Reserves and not had to go to Vietnam?
Yeah, yes, that's correct. I could have taken my chances, signed up with the Army Reserve, which was 4 years, and then 2 more inactive. So, and then you would go away. I think 6 months, get your basic done, and then once a month you'd have training, and 2 weeks out of the year you would have to go away and continue your training. So many thousands, maybe millions of guys did it.
Paul, I don't understand with that option available, why would guys run to Canada?
Just military, just not wanting to go in the military.
That's
and
absurd.
Because now, like a lot of guys went to the Air Force Reserves, the 177th, which was it then. Those guys got transferred down to Myrtle Beach, and then a couple of the squadrons got sent to Vietnam, like Johnny Rook from Egg Harbor City. He spent his time in Da Nang, and he was a reservist. So that's the other thing. Some reserve units were sent to Vietnam, so you had to take your chance.
Now, Paul, you go through basic training, and I see you went to Baltimore and got advanced individualized training. Is that when did you make the decision to go into the intelligence field, or do they pick something out?
No, what happens is when you first sign up, you get your physical, your shots, then you go to all these different classrooms and you take tests. Okay, so one of the things I put down, I love photography. And also, I said I could type. So I thought, I'll become a clerk typist. Well, I went in there, and you need to type a minimum of 60. I typed like 45. So that was out. And then they sent us in another room where you had to figure out cardboard boxes to fit in a tractor trailer. And that was another guy who was a handler. He would ship stuff over. I failed that too. So I guess they said, let's send this guy, maybe because of my eyes, they put me in Army Intelligence School, which we always say is an oxymoron, Army Intelligence.
Yeah, I'm sure a lot of the guys listening, the Marines or so you go to the Army Intelligence Center, and you're there learning that MOS.
Yes.
And when did you find out that you were shipping out?
Well, can I regress a little bit?
You could, sure.
Okay. Well, Alice decided, I lived on base. She said, well, let's try and get an apartment. Okay. So we came up and we found this house, and it was owned by an Italian couple.
Old
remember that?
Where was this at?
It's called Dundalk, Baltimore. It's outside. Okay. Dundalk, Maryland, outside of Baltimore. So the Italian couple said to us, and she says, well, we're not going to rent. We don't want to rent anymore to the military. And then she says, well, what's your name? I said, it's Giunta. She says, are you Italian? I said, no, I'm Sicilian. So she says, we'll rent it to you, right? A true story. They rented it to us for like 3 months. And then during the 3 months, tell them what happened.
We knew he was going to go to Vietnam, so we decided to start a family. And we did. So he went off to Vietnam, and I was expecting our first child. He saw her when she was 8.5 months old, I think, for the first time. And it's an awful way to have a baby. And I would see the way they have them today when their husbands are deployed. They actually watch the birth, and, it's just so different. So when she was born, I was told to contact the Red Cross. And I did, and it took over a week before they got to him to tell him he had his first baby.
Wow.
So that was barbaric back then.
Right. Yeah. But because I think I was $65 a month, I lived off base. That gave me another $25 a month right? And then when the baby was born, I think I got another 25. So I was one of the highest paid PFCs in the unit. So, but it was interesting. Well, when I first went into this intelligence field, they basically said, you guys are going to Vietnam. It was not like a guessing game, but they told us. So they said, do your job well, learn it well, and you'll survive. And things that they taught us, like using a slide rule and geometry in the Army, I couldn't learn that. I couldn't learn that in high school, but yet in 3 months, I knew about angles and pitches and using a slide rule. It was really, the way they taught you was so easy as compared to in high school. Was unbelievable.
Now, Paul, you get word that you're going overseas. Now, you come from a military family. Your dad was in the military.
No,
right? Or your uncle.
My uncle,
right?
yes.
Yeah.
I should tell you my dad's story sometime.
Was your family against you going into
oh
the
no,
military?
no, not at all. Like I said, like you were started saying, my uncle was a Marine and he was killed on Iwo Jima. So there was never any negative talk about me going. But my dad during World War II tried to get in the Army in Philadelphia, and he had something in his urine that they said no, you're rejected. So then his buddy says, go to Baltimore, they're taking everybody. So he goes to Baltimore, he was rejected again. So in all this time, I'm thinking maybe it was that law, sole surviving son. See, but nobody's around to tell me whether that was it or not. So anyway, he comes back, he goes to the Philadelphia shipyard and gets a job as a welder. Now, he never welded a thing in his life. And he said the first job they gave him was to weld a ladder on the side of a cruiser. And he got it right. He said, I got that thing perfect. And he was good that way. So that's so. Oh, and the moral of the story is he was rejected twice, but he lived to be 93 years old. So isn't that something?
Now, Paul, you're talking about 1966 when you shipped out to Nam.
Right.
So really, maybe the war's 3 or 4 years old at the time you get there.
Well,
because
yeah,
early
it was kind of very light at that time. In 66, it really popped up.
Right. That's when my brother went in the Air Force. He was
Uh-huh.
in Vietnam during that time. Now, you're a couple of years before the Tet Offensive.
Right.
And you were stationed in, how do you pronounce that? Benoit?
Benoit, yeah.
Benoit. Now, is that in the south?
That is south of Saigon, about maybe 50 miles south of Saigon, and it's a big air base there, and a small town on the river. It's called the Sum Dong Nai River. So I was stationed there, and
what was your main job? What were you supposed to?
well, before we go there, I want Alice to tell you who she lived with when I was in Vietnam.
I lived with his mother, who is still alive. She's going to be 99 years old.
That's amazing.
And she was old school Italian, and I grew up in an English household. So our cultures were totally different. She was tough. And I remember
She still is.
the night I went into labor for my daughter, I had to go up and wake her, and I didn't know what side of the bed she slept on to tell her I had to go to the hospital. And I waited till as long as I could. And I woke up my father-in-law by mistake. And it was like a Chinese fire drill after that. She was very excited to have her first granddaughter, and we've come a long way. She's a sweet woman now, but she put me through hell.
Yes.
So Vietnam was tough for him, but it wasn't easy for
The wives.
the ones they
that's
leave at home.
One of the things I've learned, the Vietnam veterans just has a place in my heart, and from having so many on the show and talking to so many, you learn that the families sacrifice so much when their husbands or wives today are away. And what's amazing, and I'm going to get into this more downstream, is the fact that here you are, 60 years, 56 years
Yeah.
removed from your service, and still advocating for your fellow
That's
veterans. We're
correct.
going to get into that. I want to go back to Vietnam.
Okay.
And when you were there, Paul, was there an awareness that Agent Orange and all this stuff was going on? I mean, did you know what was happening?
No, but let me take you through some. It was tough, but there was some good moments and funny moments. And I remember, like I told you, I flew from Oakland to Hawaii to Guam, so I can actually say I've been to Guam, and into Saigon, stayed there for maybe a week or two. But then they took us down to Ben Hoa in an old school bus that had chicken wire. I always remember this, chicken wire on the windows. And of course, it's not air conditioning, so we're driving down there, and one of the guys says, "Sarge, what's that chicken wire in the windows for?" He says, "So the VC can't throw a hand grenade in the window." For the next hour, I don't think anybody said a word. I still remember that to this day. Boom. And then they took us to the air base. The one side of the air base was old Army tents, and that was sprayed with Agent Orange to kill the weeds. Now, I didn't know that, and no, we never talked or knew nothing about Agent Orange while we were there. So anyway, we moved into tents that were occupied by the 173rd Airborne, and they moved into some better billets. So we were there for 3 months. We called it Tent City. And when we left there to go to where we actually did our intelligence work, if you left anything out, the monkeys came in, and you came back, and everything was just in disarray. So, so from there, we moved into, it was called the Sawmill. And that's where we had our billets, and the sawmill was outside of Saigon. I'm sorry, Ben Hoa.
Now, when your job seems to me it like coordinated with something like what Captain Rick did with the Marines there, with, kind of directing
That's correct.
the big guns.
We looked for targets of opportunity. And the Air Force flew the missions using an F-5, and they would run along. And first, it starts off. A commander comes to our commander and says, "We're going to be in this area. We want to know what's in there." So that's when they would fly a mission in that area, and the planes would fly up, turn around, and fly back. Now they're taking pictures up and back. Those pictures come to our reproduction repo, we called it. They print out the pictures, and then we get the pictures. They're 8 by 16. They're big, long pictures. Okay, so then we had these special set of glasses. And by looking at the pictures like this, and these glasses, everything was in 3D. The first time I saw that, I said, "Oh, my God." Because you're just looking at a picture. But when you take two pictures together and you have these stereo glasses, it becomes 3D. So you were able to see sometimes in the canopy, and sometimes it was called triple canopy. You could see trenches or maybe openings and stuff like that. And then we would we would chart it on a map, give them the lat longs, and then it went out somewhere, and from there either the first air cav bombed it, artillery, the jets would come in and strafe it, and that was very interesting. And we also did not map making, but we would make sure the maps that we got from the French were true, and a lot of them weren't. So we did map adjusted also by an airplane flying down a highway, and we could tell what was going on and rechart it. So that's it. But you know what? I want to finish here with tell her what my mom taught you.
I was going to ask her that.
She taught me how to cook.
Yes. Oh, and good cook. Meatballs the best.
Yeah, I was thinking, I don't know how many months you actually had to live there. Was it over a year?
Oh, yeah, 15. I think it was 15 months.
Yes.
Oh, okay. So it's quite a few cooking lessons. I know that's how my mom, my dad's a full-blooded Sicilian Italian. My mom's a Russian Jew.
Oh, geez.
And same thing. When my dad was in World War II, my mom ended up staying with my grandparents, and you never knew on a Sunday dinner whether we were getting a meatball or a matzo ball.
Well, Paul's has a brother 10 years younger than him, so he was a little guy, and his mother worked in the store in Summers Point, and I was his nanny too, so it was very beneficial to her too.
Yeah, she
was
helped
good
raise
with
my
me.
brother.
Yeah.
Now, your time there, Paul, was there more than one time that you came home and then went back, or
No,
just up?
nope,
You came,
never
Now,
came home.
Did you experience any of the negative junk that a lot of Vietnam veterans experienced when they came home?
No, not really. I really didn't, because it was the early days of the war. I think 1967 is when it started to take hold, and that's when all the, they saw what was going on was probably not right, and
Right.
a lot, like any war, wasted money, and guys were getting
I think
killed.
that the propaganda, Jane Fonda,
Yeah.
John Kerry.
Yeah.
I've read that the Vietnamese generals were more concerned about what was happening in the States than on the ground in Vietnam, because they didn't think they could beat us anyway.
Right.
But they knew that they could win the war in D.C.
Yeah, that was the North Vietnamese were very well. We didn't have social media then, but the news, and they were very concerned about that. As how did they look, and to make sure that the press in the United States got all the negative things that happened in the war.
Yeah, it's a shame because we now know, of course, the way Vietnam veterans have been treated, and really never getting that opportunity that the World War II veterans got, and that you see today with the Iraq and Afghanistan veterans,
Right.
the welcome homes and so on.
Well, I think that we have been treated fairly in the last 20 years. We have our Vietnam vet groups. It's like we have something even World War II vets don't have, is when we see each other. It's welcome home. How you doing, brother? We see each other on the street. It's like, I don't know this guy, but all of a sudden, and Alice will tell you, we're just like, there's a brotherhood that doesn't exist between any of the other wars that I know of. It's just a thing, and we're always, seems like we're looked up to by the Iraqi and Afghanistan vets, and I look up to those guys. But no, they said, no, you guys did a lot to pave the way.
Paul, when you look back, if I don't know what you were involved in before September 11th, whether you were involved in any motorcycle groups then, but that around 87, 88 is when Rolling Thunder first came into existence, and then became more popular into the 90s, and of course, with forming chapters across the country, it became much bigger. But when did it turn for you, where you felt that your love of this country was more important than the way you had been treated?
Well, after I got back from Vietnam, I went into the family business, and I didn't know I was a Vietnam vet. I didn't think I was a vet. Yeah, I knew I was, but you didn't even think about that because you got a family. Now all of a sudden I got 3 kids. My dad's going to retire and so forth. And then a friend of mine called me up and he says, "Hey, Paul, you got 10 years to use that GI Bill if you want to go to college or ACC." And I never thought about it. That's when I first got involved. So then I went over to ACC for 3 years. And then one day I was out at the mall, not the mall, what's the other one? Boscov's is. And there was a guy by the name of Green. I forget his first name. He was a big veterans advocate. And he says, "Oh, you're a Vietnam vet?" I said, "Yeah." He says, "Come on, why don't you sign up for VA?" You know what I told him? "Listen, I'm fine. I'm good. I got good insurance." I said, "I want that money to go to the guys that need it." And he said, "That is the wrong attitude. We need your numbers." And then I signed up. And I tell people, tell me the same thing. We need your numbers. So then I thought about it. And then really when did I get when I turned 50, I got my motorcycle and I was on a run and I saw veterans groups. That was the defining moment that I said, you know what? I'm a veteran too. I want to ride with these guys. And then it started from there.
It's interesting when you talk about getting veterans to sign up for the VA. Something just happened recently in our group. It shows you how important that is. I saw you put out a notice about the wheelchair ramp for the World War II veteran.
Right.
Now, I've been doing a lot of work. I've been working with Pat Carney,
right.
Jackie Hicker,
right.
Bob Frollo, Steve when he was alive. And one of the things that was always out there was getting many people. And when Congressman LeBiondo was the congressman, he used to hold these open houses at different veteran service, whether it's VFWs or Legions, to get people to sign up. Well, this World War II veteran that we're trying to get a ramp for, I went to our veteran service officers because I had looked up, and there are 2 grants available. One, if you're been wounded in combat, and then another one for any veteran that reaches a certain age, 65 and older. Now, this World War II veteran's in his 90s.
Oh, yeah.
But he never signed up. So when we tried to get we could have got him a ramp for nothing.
That's right.
But because he hadn't signed up, the VA representatives told us it would take a year for him to be in the system before we could do that. So it is important. If you're out there and you're listening, if you're the family of a veteran, make sure that they're signed up. If you have a son or daughter that came back from Iraq or Afghanistan, get them to sign up, even if they never use the benefits.
Mike, Alice, tell Mike about your dad.
You signed him up, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And he was on a lot of medication. And they lived strictly on Social Security, my parents. So Paul got him to sign up, and it really gave them a break as far as his medications go. Then he lost his hearing, and Paul was able to get him hearing aids, and he thought they were the greatest things.
Oh, my God. But here's the other story: is he was in the Merchant Marines in World War II. So it took them, what, 40 or 50 years after the war for them to be declared veterans. And as soon as that happened, I said, we got to get you in the system. Now, he had hearing problems because he was a wiper. It was a diesel engine. And what a wiper was, he had buckets of oil, and they would wipe the pistons that were exposed in the boats back then. And he was a wiper, and he says if we ever got hit, I'd never know it. I would never know it. The ship would go down, and I would go down with it. But he never got to a compensation level, but he did get hearing aids and his medication.
When we built the Veterans Commerce Center on the Black Horse Pike, I made sure on the monument that it was the Army, Navy, Air Force, Marines, and the Merchant Marines on that.
Oh, good, yeah.
And it is important. Marco Polo, I mean, he started out in the Merchant Marines.
What a story that is.
Paul, you're out of Vietnam, you're home, you're working. I've got a question for you.
Yeah.
Did your dad own the hardware store in Egg Harbor City also?
Yes. Well, what had happened is, by the way, before I forget, when I got home from Vietnam, we lived in Summers Point. They asked me to come to a city hall meeting, okay, and they actually gave me the key to the city with another Vietnam vet. I cannot think of his name, and I still have it. So back then it was okay, So. Anyway, but yeah, my dad had a sub shop in Egg Harbor. Then he started the Western Auto. Brought my uncle in as a partner. He was a Navy vet. Brought him in and then started the store in Summers Point. And because of the big families, we split. My Uncle Sid got Egg Harbor and we got Summers Point.
Al and I are very good friends with Nick and Cookie. Campagna.
Oh, yes.
And I don't know if someone had passed away, and it might have been when your dad passed.
It might have been at Door.
It was listed.
Nikki's mother.
Campagna.
Yeah,
it's unbelievable. Small world.
It was. My Aunt Dora. She was the last
Nikki's
to pass
mother.
away. Right. So, did you know them through the church?
Through Mount Pleasant.
Oh, okay,
Pleasantville
yes.
first. And
Right.
Then they went to Green Tree when.
Yes.
And the guy that owned the hardware store in Ventnor, Larry.
Yes.
Yeah, I became friends with him, but don't tell anybody.
All right. He's gone.
Yeah,
Larry's
I know.
gone.
He sold that place.
Yes. But I think he passed away too. He's
Yeah,
got.
he did. Yeah.
Oh, he had to be. Yeah.
Yeah, Larry died. Yeah.
He's all right.
Yeah, it's been a few years now.
Yeah.
But the guy before Larry that had Arrow Hardware.
That was it. Arrow.
Arrow.
That's the guy I know. I'm thinking
Al
of that.
Shore, I
Al,
think.
yes. Al Shore had Arrow Hardware. That's the guy I was thinking of, not
That's
Larry.
who we're thinking of. Al Shore.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
The guy in Ventnor.
That was after Al
Yeah.
sold it to him.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. I keep forgetting his last name.
Now, Paul, you're in the family business. You're starting to ride a motorcycle. How did you get hooked up with Rolling Thunder?
Well, and Alice rode with me. One day we were riding, and I'm not sure if it was Rolling Thunder I saw. Was it? Okay, it was Rolling
We
Thunder.
stopped at the same restaurant.
Yes. It was Bob. I can't remember Bob, but he was
From Cape May County?
no, he was a prison guard up in the Marlton area. Anyway, Bob Wolfie was his name. I said, "Can I ride with you guys?" And they said, "Yeah, sure." And then they saw I don't know if I had a Vietnam vet, so they said, "Sure," but I didn't join them. See, I joined a club out of Vineland, which was called the oh God, do you remember? It was called Firebase Nom MC. And I used to ride to Violin, go to a meeting once a month, and then have to come home from there to Summers Point at night. And there are no straight roads from Vineland to Summers Point. So anyway, after about 2 years, I left them, and that's when I found Rolling Thunder. And those guys said, "Oh, Paul, we don't know why you stayed with us so long." I said, "Well, I like the idea, and you were a veterans group, you know." And then Rolling Thunder, and that was, the rest was history, because Rolling Thunder did a lot for veterans, where the other club was very small. We could only help
Right.
ourselves.
One of the things I had first got involved with Rolling Thunder National,
Yes.
and it took me 2 years for them to give me contact information so I could get into the local one. And Ted Farina number,
Yeah.
and I'll never forget riding down to the Cape May Point
Yes.
to that meeting down there. But it was the turning point in my life, because September 11th was the day Al and I worked together for 25 plus years
Uh-huh.
doing sideline photography and locker room interviews
Yeah,
up
I
at the
remember
vet,
that, yeah.
the Link, the bank. And I mean, we just idolized all these professional athletes.
Right.
And then September 11th happened, and it was like instantly I came to the realization that our heroes weren't between the white lines.
That's right.
And that's when I started looking into Rolling Thunder, and finally got into that. And it was really pretty interesting in the beginning. I really enjoyed the camaraderie, being around. Well, we had Korean War veterans in the group
Oh, yeah,
at that
yep.
time. And I'll never forget that first time that I rode with you guys down to D.C. for Memorial Day weekend. And that Friday, we went out to dinner at that fish something restaurant in
Uh-huh.
Old Town,
Yeah.
in, Arlington, or Alexandria.
Yes.
And I'm sitting there. Next to me was that Korean War veteran. Can't remember his
He
name.
was from Cape May.
Right.
Yeah, he had a Honda.
And I'm sitting there. Next thing I feel his head on my shoulders.
Uh-huh.
He had passed out in the restaurant.
I remember that.
Yes, because back then, Mike, things were different. Like, we took our wives to D.C. We went to D.C. not for 3 days. We would go for 5 days and stay at the hotel, and we would make a social event. And there was always one of the gals would drive a van or a truck up, so we'd always have what we call a chase vehicle in case a bike broke down or something happened. But yeah, they were pretty good times. But before you came along, we were more involved in the POWMIA situation.
Right.
In fact,
Right.
I was very much interested, and they made me in charge of POWMIA. And then once a year, we would go to the national convention, and we would actually get to meet the guys who were in the field searching for bodies. And then when I found out the truth about John McCain, I was not a John McCain fan. And John Kerry, what they wanted to do is squash the POWMIA. They said it hurt the nation's soul. So let's put that to bed. And that was the wrong thing to do,
Right.
because we're still finding bodies today. And, and some of the parents are gone, but at least their brothers, sisters can get their remains, whatever it might be.
Right.
And for years, they had a program in Vietnam. It was called Bones for Bucks. Not too many people know about this. The Vietnamese would find bones, and they would get paid if they could be identified as American or even Vietnamese soldiers' bones, which a lot of people didn't like that Bones for Bucks, and I thought, that's a good idea. Pay them. Let them do the digging, But see, the attitude of an Asian is, if your loved one died in that country and you can't find the body, that's okay, because they died. where their ancestors died. So that was part of their thinking, and ours was altogether different.
Right.
So
Yeah, my Uncle Alfred, my dad's brother, he died in the Battle of the Bulge. And when he had joined the Army actually before my dad did. He was a few years younger. And my dad actually didn't have to go at the time. He was 26. And they just, at the time, if you could get two people to join, I think it was the reserves, then you could get one person out. So my dad went and got his buddy. They joined, not knowing that my Uncle Alfred was having marital problems and he wouldn't leave. So they're all in now.
yeah,
And of course, my Uncle Alfred was killed at the Battle of the Bulge, and his wife would not bring the body home. So he's buried in it's Marsden Cemetery, American Cemetery in Holland.
that brings up a thought, and I have to tell you this. My Uncle Paul was killed on Iwo Jima the second day. And I have pictures of his burial site on Iwo Jima. His buddy had taken it. So my grandmother got the letter. At that time, it was a letter delivered.
Right.
And she did not believe that he was killed. And so she would go to, I always say soothsayers. What are they called?
Fortune teller.
Fortune tellers. And so the government says, well, we're going to bury your son on Iwo Jima. And she said, oh, no, I want my son buried in the United States. Here's the kicker. Where did they bury him? In the Punch Bowl in Hawaii, which was in the United States. She never got to see his gravesite. I mean, after, she thought he would be come back and buried in Mays Landing, where he was born and raised. So, and
I always told my dad, he used to get so upset with me. I said to him, Dad, I think Uncle Alfred just switched dog tags so he didn't have to come back here.
he's out there.
He's probably still over there in Italy.
Well, that what you're saying is partly true, because there's a lot of our POWs that we say they're POWs. They just left. They went into Cambodia, and I'm trying to think of the other country too. Laos. They went into Laos, and they just became part of the population. Now, Rolling Thunder used to send this guy at their expense and his expense. He went over there for 10 years, and he did find some of these guys. And I can't remember his name. It was Larry something. But they didn't want to come back. They said, look, I got a wife here. I got family. They spoke perfect Laotian or Cambodian, and they did not want to come back. So they weren't POWs. They weren't KIA. They were just AOL, and
Wow.
leave them alone. And then I found out later when we were in Hawaii, we went to Maui, and they said at the top of the mountain, there's a contingency of Vietnam vets that want to be left alone, and they have tripwires, and they come down once a week or once a month to the city and buy their food, and they go back up there. I don't know if that's still true or not.
Yeah. So, as we move through the history of Rolling Thunder Chapter 4 here in South Jersey, of course, a very good friend of yours and a guy who I've really respected a lot, Rich Fiddler, became president.
Yeah.
And then got sick. And
I think he was voted in, he got sick, and then he died.
right.
And this
but,
was a strong guy who lifted weights, kept himself.
yeah, it was a shame because the vice president at the time, not that I myself was a non-veteran, became president of the Legion Riders, but I think that he had an agenda. Let me go back before we get to the end of Rolling Thunder. I want to go back to a very important time. You led a ride one time up to Mount Kitsko.
Oh, yes. Oh, my
I'll never
God.
forget that one.
Yes.
Alice was on that ride.
This was a classic.
There was about, 12 of us went up, and that was the beginning of the end. That's when our president and his wife rode with Chapter 2 instead of leading us up. That was when we first started to realize this guy was not, he'd rather be with Chapter 2 personnel than our own.
Yes.
So you led that ride up there. I think at some point, maybe up in North New Jersey, we might have caught up with Chapter 2, but they were on their own up there. And when we did a trip, that was a Friday, Mount Kitco.
Yep.
Sunday was going to be the unveiling of the Gold Star Mother
that's right.
ceremony, the big...
That's why we did that, the Gold Star Mothers statue.
But Saturday, we decided to go to West Point.
Yes.
And there was me, I know it was you, Tom Smith, me,
Decini.
Tom Tracy, Joe Decini, and Maps.
Yeah.
Six of us heading over there. And I forget how far it was.
And Alice.
And Alice was on the back of your
Kathy
bike.
Smith.
Yes.
Kathy Smith, yeah.
Yep. Alice was on the back of your bike. When we went there, it was beautiful out.
Yes.
And I'll never forget that bridge. I don't know if that's the Hudson River or St. Lawrence River, but that was one of the most beautiful scenery I have ever seen. And we go over that bridge, we go to West Point, and sometime during that visit, it came up about doing a tour.
Right. I said, let's take the bus tour. There's an hour tour, 2-hour tour. Nobody wanted to. But do you remember I led you up to the gate, and here comes the security. And, I'm all patched up, Vietnam vet, blah, blah, blah. He said, where do you think you're going? I said, well, we want to go inside and take a look at West Point. He said, you're not allowed inside unless you have a pass. And these guys were not vets. They were security guards, rent-a-cops. So anyway, we're pulling out, and two guys that were officers came over and apologized. And I said, that's no problem. They were doing their job. But he said, you shouldn't have been treated that way. So then go ahead, finish the story.
So we, six of us, say 5 bikes go in. One, Tom Tracy, said, I think it might rain. I'm heading back.
Yeah.
So he leaves. We go and do the tour. We come out, and we leave. And just as we're going across that bridge, it starts to rain. Now, on the other side of that bridge, we stopped, and we got into our rain gear.
It was a deluge, too.
When we headed there, that was a mountain road. Mm-hmm. And it was just a drop-off on both sides, 1 lane each direction. And all I saw was the back of Tom Smith's rear view, his brake light.
Yeah.
And he had yours in front of him.
Yep.
And so on. That was, I could not even see.
What we did, we turned on our 4-ways, and I was looking at the GPS, and she was guiding me in the ear because I followed the white center line. And guys always say that. If it wasn't for you with those 4-ways, we followed
Never
you down.
would have found.
Yeah, unbelievable. Then we get down to the bottom, and it's clear again. Had we waited another half hour, we would have missed that rain.
Yeah. What was unbelievable to me, we get down there, and we went under an overhang.
Mm-hmm.
And we stopped there, took our rain gear off, and Joe Decini, who was a infantry in Vietnam, he comes up to me and says, Mike, I was in the infantry in Vietnam, and I've never been that scared.
I was too. That was
hairy. I know it. So,
but that wasn't the end of our trip. No. There was one other thing happened after
your phone call.
Yeah, Sunday morning, we were out at that diner, and I was
Mount Kisco Diner.
Yep. And you were sitting right across from me, and Alice was right next to you, and I get a text, and I'm trying to figure out what it said, and I'm turning my phone different ways.
Because it wasn't a smartphone back then. It was a flip phone.
Right, it was a Nextel, I think I had.
Yeah.
And I'm looking, and all of a sudden I recognized it in my.
Let's see.
All the blood drained out of my face. It was a.
Look, our kids are looking. Our kids are watching us on their computer.
It was an EPT, early pregnancy test, and it was positive. And my wife had written at the bottom, "Do not tell anyone yet."
And I said, Mike, are you okay? And you said, yes, I just got news it's going to be life-changing.
And I never said a word. And that,
Here, hon.
they watching?
Yeah. Oh yeah, you got good viewership. Oh wait, I don't want that one.
So
That's
it
mine.
was interesting because for the rest of the ride home, I was numb. Yeah. It was unbelievable. And Alice is always, every time you guys see Mikey, who was,
Yeah.
you always remind me of that time.
The funny thing was, Mike, she could tell by your face that your wife was pregnant. You didn't even have to
I
tell
didn't
her.
say a word.
I guessed
know.
it.
Yeah,
I guessed
she
it.
said, "Oh."
Yeah.
Because you were in shock.
So how many years ago was that?
That was August of 2008,
Oh, okay. Yeah.
because Mikey was born April of '09.
Yeah.
So, and that was that was August. By December of 2008, Rolling Thunder Chapter 4 lost 20-some members when you, Joe Hutch, and Bill Butler
Right.
formed the American Legion Riders out
I-
of Post
yeah.
352.
I
And
did some research on that, and most of the guys we talked to said, "I never heard of them. I never heard of them." And I said, "Well, guess what? You're going to hear a lot about them." And that was the best move we ever made.
Right, and that one of the big things, the original American Legion Riders came out of the Patriot Guard, who were
That's right.
They
Yeah.
were they were going to all the Westboro
Baptist
Baptist Church. Who were,
Yes.
that was the beginning of the Iraq War.
Right.
War dead coming home, and
Yes.
they were causing issues at the funeral
Right.
services.
Well, I remember the first one I did with the Patriot Guard was in Atlantic City, for everybody listening, and there was a burial, and these people from this church would come and try and disrupt the burial arrangements, and we would have hundreds of guys with flags to shield them. And then when they would start shouting, guys would start with their motorcycles, so they couldn't hear. And then they finally went away. But one thing would happen: guys would get so ticked off, they would start a fight with these people, and they had films and attorneys. They would end up suing you, so you couldn't actually, do what you thought was right, is to knock
Right.
the you-know-what out of them. And they were just so disrespectful. It was unbelievable that a Christian church, would do that.
Yeah. During our time with the Legion Riders, there was one occasion, and I don't know if you'll remember this. It's a picture I took during this honor mission that will live in infamy. It was just you, John Carmen, and I on Lou Molinari's funeral. And I took that picture, you and John, at the cemetery, standing in the flag line
I
in
know
the
that
rain.
picture.
And that picture was the one that the Democrats used to bash John. Because of
because
the
of the
patch that was
Yes,
on.
I remember that, and I still have that in my favorites. And every now and then, I send that over to John.
So John, if you're listening, I apologize for that. I do have to say that it's pretty upsetting that anybody would hold that against,
Right.
standing an honor mission for a World War II United States Navy veteran, and then using that to hurt someone politically. I thought that was it.
Well, today, Mike, they'll use anything to hurt the other party, and right wing and left wing were both guilty of it.
Yeah.
But
We're going to. I'm going to play a song.
okay,
Give us an opportunity to take a little breather here.
you have to.
On November 8, 1965,
This is Big and Rich,
173rd
8th of
Airborne
November.
Brigade on Operation Hump, War Zone D in Vietnam, were ambushed by over 1,200 VC. 48 American soldiers lost their lives. Severely wounded and risking his own life, Lawrence Joel, a medic, was the first living black man since the Spanish-American War to receive the United States Medal of Honor for saving so many lives in the midst of battle that day. Our friend Niles Harris, retired 25 years United States Army, the guy who gave Big Kenny his top hat, was one of the wounded who lived. This song is his story. Caught in the action of kill or be killed, greater love hath no man than to lay down his life for his brother.
Said goodbye to his mama as he left South Dakota to fight for the red, white, and blue. He was 19 and green with a new M16, just doing what he had to do. He was dropped in the jungle where the choppers would rumble with the smell of napalm in the air. Then the sergeant said, "Look up ahead." Like a dark evil cloud, 1,200 came down on him and 29 more. They fought for their lives, but most of them died in the 173rd Airborne. On the 8th of November, the angels were crying as they carried his brothers away. With the fire raining down and the hell all around, there were few men left standing that day. Saw the eagle fly through a clear blue sky. 1965, the 8th of November. Now he's 58 and his ponytail's gray, but the battle's still blazing his head. He limps when he walks, but he's strong when he talks about the shrapnel that left in his leg. He puts on a gray suit over his airborne tattoo, and he ties it on one time a year, and remembers the fallen as he orders a tall one and swallows it down with his tears. On the 8th of November, the angels were crying as they carried his brothers away. With the fire raining down and the hell all around, there were few men left standing that day. Saw the eagle fly through a clear blue sky. 1965, the 8th of November. Saw the eagle fly through a clear blue sky. 1965. On the 8th of November, the angels were crying as they carried his brothers away. With the fire raining down and the hell all around, there were few men left standing that day. On the 8th of November, the angels were crying as they carried his brothers away. With the fire raining November. 8th of November. 8th of November. Said goodbye to his mama as he left South Dakota to fight for the red, white, and blue. He was 19 and green with a new M16, just doing what he had to do.
And welcome back to Veterans Matter live stream broadcast. This is Mike Merlino with my guests, Paul and Alice Giunta. Before we get back into Paul's story, I do want to mention coming up, they come around so quick now. Here we are, the end of August. We have about 6 weeks, and we're going to come upon the 22nd annual Ride for the Vets. That's on Sunday, October 9th. And I just wanted to mention quickly, and we'll mention this every week leading up to it, remember that our fall event actually is a ride. It originates at the Atlanta County Harley-Davidson, and the registration is 10 to 11:30. I mean, you hit three places before you end up back at the American Legion Post 352. If you don't have a bike and don't want to participate in the ride, you can always come right to the post at 1 p.m. where there's I believe they're raising it to $25 this year.
Right,
Because
first time in
the food prices
10
are
years.
just ridiculous. But that $25 gets you all the draft beer you could possibly want. A great Back Bay Barbecue does the catering of the chicken and beef. And there's always a lot of veterans there to share their experiences, to thank them for their service. Great entertainment with the Motts Creek Pickers. They have a really huge local following. So, look forward to a great turnout. One of the things that we've done, kind of incorporated every year, no matter what the weather looks like, we do put a tent up. So you never know the day of whether or not you end up with wind or a rain. And under that tent, we have Chinese auction, a 50-50 going on, a raffle for a basket of cheer.
Can't forget that.
And so many people walk out of there with a door prize. If you participate in the ride, every one of those stops, 5 including the end at the American Legion, you get 5 chances for a door prize. And there's all kinds of door prizes. It could be a food item, it could be a motorcycle part, or you just never know. But I never see people disappointed in what they acquire. So that is October 9th. Registration at Atlanta County Harley-Davidson, 10 to 11:30. And then if you don't want to ride, it's 1 p.m. at the post. And we do ask that you do not arrive before 1 p.m. because there's a lot of things going on, the setup of the band and everything. So 1 p.m. at the post. And, of course, if you have any questions about that, I'm going to give you some contact information for our president, Tom Dixon. He can be reached at 609-839-9568. So if you have any questions about the ride itself or the event, give Tom a call. So it's 609-839-9568. And I want to let our listening audience know that you can call in 609-798-4475. You have a comment to make or you'd like talk to Paul and Alice. Maybe you just want to thank Paul for his service. Feel free to call 609-798-4475. And please be patient as calls will be answered the order they appear. Here we are back. And Paul, there were things inside your bio here that you wanted to touch on your service in Vietnam. So go ahead and fill us in.
Yes, I wanted to mention that what our unit was called MIBARS, Military Intelligence Battalion Aerial Reconnaissance Support. And we picked targets of opportunity for the Air Force, the 1st Air Cav, which I'm sure a lot of you vets know, and also the 173rd Airborne, which turned out to be the unit in Vietnam that lost the most casualties. One of the big things that I worked on and I was proud of, it was called Operation Junction City. Now, this was the first airborne parachute jump since the Korean War. And it was in the area called the Iron Triangle. And the Iron Triangle, I don't know, it started at Tay Ninh and it went up to Cu Chi, and I can't think of the other city that made up this triangle. But the VC had a stronghold in there. Now, you're not going to believe this, but it was also part of Michelin rubber tree plantation. So in the beginning of the war, we were not allowed to bomb the rubber tree plantations owned by the French. And if we did, we had to pay them so much for each tree. So finally that ended, and they said, you know what, this is crazy. So they came up with Operation Junction City, and it was February 27th, 1967. And it was part of a bigger 3-month operation to sweep that area. So anyway, our unit picked out, there you go, Golden Triangle. Our unit picked out the jump site. And our commander said there are no good jump sites there. It's too many trees. So what did they do? They sent in and Charlie Callahan can back me up on this, they sent in the combat engineers to clear the jump site first. And part of our job was, since it was out of the Benoit Air Base in that area, they sent a mission and they flew up this road 13 that would go into the Iron Triangle, and then we got the information, and from the air we could see all the potholes and any culverts that need repairing. We would send that to the combat engineers, and they repaired that road to send up their vehicles. So anyway, the jump went off, and they did clear the area. I think they said they killed 2,700 Vietnamese, Viet Cong, and we had very few casualties. Most of our casualties were broken arms, broken legs, and things like that. And we did have a few KIA. There you go. Diane, yes, Quilan. Mike just showed me a picture of it. That's good. Yeah, see, today you can get almost anything you want in Cambodia.
Paul, did you ever have a desire to go back?
Well, hadn't I been married, I would have been like foolish. Like a lot of my friends had 2 tours, some had 3 tours. Monty Day, he served down in Mekong Delta, and he had 2 tours, and Monty was wounded twice. And here's a story where I'm sitting there talking to Monty, and Eleanor says, oh, he can't get in the VA, he makes too much money. I said, he was wounded, right? She said, yeah. I said, he's in. He just has to go to proper people, and because he's wounded, he was in, and today he's in. I don't know what his rating is, but and he's another. Well, yeah, he's got a Purple Heart, which brought him in, but Monty would not go for PTSD. He just didn't. He says, oh, he always say, oh, those guys are nuts, you know. So, and anyway, so Monty 2 tours. There was another fellow we rode with from down south. He had 3 tours because he was single. A lot of the guys stayed because they were single. But one other quick little sidebar here. After September 11th, I was so ticked. I was too old to go. I said maybe I could drive a bus or something, or a truck or something. I went onto the DOD's website and I looked for image interpreters. Yeah, they were looking for image interpreters. But you know what? You know why they wouldn't take me? I didn't have a college degree. What I did at 19, I did at 19, but at, how old was I? 50, 60? I couldn't do it again because I didn't have a college degree. So anyway, I think she would have shot me if I went in the DOD. But before I got out, they came to us, the Department of Defense, and they said, we're looking for guys in the intelligence unit. And so, okay, what's the deal? You got to sign up for 2 years, and you're going to be paid $12,000. This was 1967. And then, well, somebody says, but what's the catch? Well, after we put you through training, you got to come back to Saigon and sign a contract to work in Saigon for 1 year. And I said, that's a lot of money, but it wasn't for me. So then I left, and our compound, we were never really hit till after I left, but they mortared the Esso. It was called Esso back then, which is Exxon. They mortared that twice when I was there, and I was lucky that it stayed right there and not come into our compound. And then one of the other things too is we looked into Cambodia, and it was called we called it SLAR, Side Looking Airborne Radar. This was all new, and they would fly along the Ho Chi Minh Trail, and it would beam into Cambodia, and we were able to pick out targets of opportunity. So
A lot of people think that because Benoit was so far south that they weren't really effective, but that air base was attacked during the Tet Offensive.
Oh yeah, it was hit pretty hard, and they killed hundreds of Viet Cong. And this just came up about 3 years ago. And what they did at the end of one of the runways, they dug a big ditch and they buried the Vietnamese that were killed there in that ditch and covered it up. And years later, somebody over there found it, and we sent our team in and recovered all those bodies so that they could be buried. And probably if you Google it, you can find it. So
Yeah, you know, there was, I don't know what Vietnam veterans thought about things like the Rambo movies. When
very entertaining, but not true.
when he went back over there,
Yeah.
I it's all glorified and everything, but there was one thing that Stallone said at the end of that movie that I thought was very poignant. When he was talking to the colonel, and the colonel said, "John, what do you want?" And he said, "I want them, the American people, to love us as much as we love them." And I think that was one of the things that today the American people finally recognized with the Vietnam veterans.
Yes.
And I know for myself, and it's why I did the Welcome Home You Never Received Bet Rock.
Right.
And we may do this again. We're looking into certain things, and hopefully we'll have the backing of
Did you clear it with Vicky this time?
The guy who was entertainment director in Wildwood had actually asked me to do it. We were going to set this up on the Friday of Bike Week. The last time they had a couple of bands come in. I think Foghat was one of them, and one other band. So we had actually met, and I told him, "Look, I'd do it." Now, the one percenters kind of destroyed Aurora to the Shore, but that doesn't mean we can't do something again. I told him I'll do it. You set up the sponsorship because I'm not doing that again.
Oh yeah,
But it was a great day, and what it was meant for was to give our local Vietnam veterans an opportunity to get something that they really had never gotten. And that's one of the things I would like to say. You have family listening in on this show, and I want to, on behalf of them and the rest of Paul, I want to welcome home and thank you for your service, because
Well, I appreciate that, and it's I think it's been very good. The republic or the public does appreciate when I wear my hat. I get so many thank you for your service. Thank you for your service. Sometimes I won't wear it because I don't want the accolades, but I do want to meet other Vietnam vets, and that's how we meet all the time. She'll tell you wherever I go, I bump into them.
well, one of the things that my wife and I do, and if we're out to dinner somewhere, and I do this not for me,
Yeah.
and I never let anyone know who I am, but for my children. I want them to make sure that they pay it down the road too, that they understand that every freedom and liberty they have came because of what you guys have done. And so if I see a veteran, someone wearing a hat or a jacket, I go right to the register. I got like a $50 or $100 gift card, and I'll give it to them.
That's nice.
And
yeah.
I want my children to understand
Yes.
that and it works.
Yeah.
And I got to tell you, I have always looked up to you guys. Well, you're older than me, so
A few years.
always respect my elders. But
But
you
now,
guys, that when you formed the Legion Riders, one of the things, Paul, that has set the American Legion Riders apart from clubs like like Rolling Thunder, whose main objective was POW MIA awareness, and that's
Right.
that is probably the most important part of any VSO. But what the Legion Riders have managed to do, you figure we started this January of 2009. That was
Right.
our first meeting. And here we are 13 years later, 13 and a half years. And how many veterans, from these young guys all the way to our World War II veterans,
Right.
have been assisted because of the work that
Right.
you, Bill, and Hutch did from that very beginning. And I'm really proud to
Well-
have been a part of that.
well, Mike, one thing I like to say is we're so proud of you, because us vets just can't do it ourselves. So we appreciate the veterans advocate, and I think you're probably the number one veterans advocate. So we look up to you, and we appreciate that.
I thank you for that. And one of the reasons I do it, besides the fact that I understand, is I never got to thank my dad for his service. I can remember as a little boy coming down, getting ready to go to school, and my dad had a couple of, there was a photographs on the table. I thought my dad had put it there, and I'm looking at it, and one looked like a outdoor barbecue without a lid on it, but human bones were in it. And then there was another picture of men and women holding on to this chain link fence, and their arms and legs were like pencils.
Oh yeah.
And then there was a picture that's ingrained on my mind, I will never forget it, was 2 or 3 flatbed railroad cars stacked a story high with human bodies. My dad had liberated Buchenwald, and the Germans knew the Americans were coming and had gave up without a fight. But before the Americans got there, they dug up all the bodies, stacked them on these cars, and were going to ship them out when the British bombed the railroads. They couldn't be moved. Well, those pictures, my brother had gotten into my dad's military stuff. When my dad saw them, he freaked. and my brother was going to take him into school for show and tell.
Oh my God.
You know, and I never did see them again. Don't know what my dad did with them after he passed, but he never talked about his service. Never, ever. I can remember sitting on a couch, you know, watching the news during the Vietnam War, and this was about 1968, 69, right after the My Lai massacre.
Oh, right.
And my dad, you know, all these adults of that era believed all that propaganda that the Vietnam veterans were baby killers or doing.
That's right. Yep.
And I can remember my dad just storming out of the room when he saw that. And when my brother came home, he wouldn't let him. My dad was the vice commander in Ventnor, would not let my brother join the VFW. That's how strongly he felt.
Because we weren't welcome in the beginning at the VFW. And because we didn't fight in a real war. But now the VFWs are run by Vietnam vets.
It's unbelievable. But I've always felt bad that I never understood what my dad had been through. And, you know, back when the World War II veterans came home, take care of your families, get a job. PTSD wasn't really thought of. And
no, some of them had shell shock. Remember that?
Yep.
It was called shell shock.
Yeah, I used to have an Italian teacher in high school who was in Italy during World War II. And the students would think it was a joke. They would take their books and drop them on the floor, and he'd be jumped because he was just stigmatized by the bombing that went on when he was a young guy. But so it's easy for me, and I enjoy the work we do with the Legion Riders. You know, Paul, when you look back, your presidency, Joe Hutch, Dave Eastlock, 6 years as presidency.
Yeah.
I did it for 3 years. And now Tommy Dixon, who's doing just a great job of where it's come to.
Well, one problem we have, and this is a good problem, we have money to help vets. We can't find vets to help. They're far and few in between in the Tri-County that we try and help. So if somebody knows of a family that needs help, they should contact us. And that's why I get all this stuff from different organizations on Facebook about wheelchairs and lifts, and I put it out there on Facebook again, and it keeps going and going, and then all of a sudden somebody finds it and needs it.
I have a couple things I wanted to touch base with you on. One of the things, your opinion on some of the things, like the stolen valor that goes on.
Oh, yes.
You know, for veterans, I mean, it's got to aggravate the heck out of you.
Well, they do have a stolen valor law, and for a while there, they were catching guys left and right who was, walk in with the decorations, and they were usually wrong. And that's how they can tell, because they had their decorations stacked wrong. So they knew that something was wrong. But to this day, lately I haven't heard, because I belong to a couple stolen valor organizations on Facebook, and it's been quite a while since they've gotten anybody.
Well, there have been some young guys that have tried to breach the system. They show up at a local VFW, but like you said, they usually make a mistake.
You ask them what their MOS is, and they look at you, they're starry-eyed, and
right.
And were you TDY any place? You just start talking some lingo, and they're like, so you could pick them out.
Yeah, one of the things, Paul, that you're recognized for, I don't know if you realize this, but it's very important, is that over the years, let's take that headstone that was in the back of the Legion, laying there in
Right.
the garden, and how you went online and found the people whose family it
Yes,
was.
yes. In fact, I'm still friends with her, and once a year she sends me a picture of that headstone in her backyard. That was her grandfather's headstone, and somebody dropped it off at the Legion. They didn't know what to do with
Yeah.
it. They were working on a house, and here it was. They dropped it off. Somebody else puts it in the back of the Legion around some flowers, and I come in there and they say, "What is this?" And from there, it just snowballed. It was a good thing for us to do that.
And that told me that people sometimes find it too easy to give up.
Mm-hmm.
And I can remember a good friend of ours, Ed Afanador, when his mother-in-law's dad had passed, a Navy veteran.
Mm-hmm.
He was an officer, and they wanted to bury him in his uniform. Well, they couldn't find his uniform.
Oh, that's right. Was he a Navy guy?
Yep.
Yes.
And what we did, we found the family all the way up in Boston.
I
And
remember that.
Eddie and I drove all the way up there, and they were just so nice and couldn't do enough for us.
Mhm.
It got us because this woman's father was a naval officer, and so he was able to be buried in his dress
Yes.
blues. It was
I remember that, and there was also too a guy had passed away, and once again they found his Marine Corps jacket that he had all kind of patches on it. They found that in a construction site, and we were able to find the son, and Larry Lemieux helped out with this. We found the son. And the son, took pictures of the jacket, and he said, "I want to donate it to the museum out there by the veteran cemetery." So it's in the museum now. If you ever go out there, you'll see this Marine Corps. So little stuff like that,
yeah, it's meaningful, especially to the families that are left.
Right.
Yeah. When you look at the work today, since, like I said, you, Bill, and Hutch
Mhm.
started the American Legion Riders. I forget exactly how many charter members we had at the beginning. It was 20.
At least
5 or
24, 25,
Yeah. I think today we might have 5 or 6 of us
That's
still
right.
active. But you've got to be proud of how far this has come. You look at the group today. We're starting to get some younger guys involved
Yep,
because
that's good.
one of the things I've learned, especially through working with the Vietnam vets, is that once this younger generation starts having the same kind of problems, it won't be Agent Orange related, but it'll be the burn pit issues. Then they're going to start.
And
Get-
Camp Lejeune. Oh, they're bombing on TV. All you see it
Yeah.
on Facebook, Camp Lejeune.
I'm kind of a little aggravated about those TV commercials
Ah.
because you don't need to go to an attorney to get your compensation. All you need to do is hit a VA officer. And
Well, I talked to Butler about that, and he said that he's got shakes, and he was there. So he says they've been really dragging their feet. Now, what happens is when the VA drags their feet, that's when these attorneys step in, see, and then they press for you. And if they get compensated, if you get compensated, they get part of that compensation. Now there's a big
40%.
there's a big class action suit, so who knows? But when it comes down to it, the guys will get peanuts. It's always the
Yeah,
attorneys.
it is a shame. You
Yeah.
look at guys like Tommy.
Yeah.
We had Tommy Dixon and Cardo Urso. It won the show
Yeah.
over the winter, and it was the information was invaluable. And if you have somebody like Steve Wolicki,
Yeah.
Steve would not let something go away. And it was great working with Steve. There
Yeah.
aren't many people like that.
I know it's now. I don't I'm in the VA system, but I'm in Florida, and they're basically the same way. They have two VSOs that are paid by the state of Florida, and then they have a great VA system in Florida. And last year they replaced. They gave me cataract surgery, and and I didn't ask for it, but they said, "Oh yeah, we can do that."
Right in the VA facility?
No, they send you to a private
That's,
eye centers of Florida. They did take care of the hearing aids through the VA, and unfortunately, from what I heard, is that a lot of these second-party doctors are not going to be available soon. The VA, I understand, is pulling in, so now that means the wait times will build up again.
right.
And I didn't mind, like they kind of badmouth the VA. Oh, you got to wait 30 days to see a doctor. Well, if you're in Florida, you got maybe 60 days to see a doctor. Everybody, they're all
It's
so
same.
busy.
I want to get my teeth cleaned.
Yeah.
I got to wait till January.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a,
That's
I have a dermatologist. If I want to go to a new one, if they'll take me,
yes.
90
Yep.
days.
That's
minimum
correct.
To get it. It's not just
So
the VA, but
right. But I see. I don't want to get political here, but I see the VA and the previous administrations really made big gains. And I'm sure there's guys that are going to say, "Oh no, I couldn't do that." Look, nothing's 100%, but for 95% of the vets, I think the VA was better.
let's face it. That administration, the military was a priority.
That's correct.
The previous administration, for 8 years, I sat across from a Navy officer who had 30 years, a good friend of, Larry Passantrilli.
Yes.
From Longport.
Longport.
And he was just, could not believe how they let the Navy so weak. And then when the next administration came in, that was a priority. Today, it's worse than it was in the.
And during the other.
Yeah, it's very sad that they would let this go, and
Well,
what it does, it just makes the country a laughing stock.
Well, if you look down through history, a certain group would always balance the budget on the backs of the military, and I mean, that's a fact. You can check it out.
Sure it is.
You know, and then the next guy comes in, he's got to spend money and try and get the military. And we're so far behind Russia and China, and you might not want to hear it about the supersonic missiles that they have.
Right.
We're working on it, but I don't think we have it.
You know, I've been doing tax and accounting since the 80s.
Yes.
And at one time in the early 2000s, about 40% of my business was outside union guys.
Mm-hmm.
And everybody, it's not a secret that most union guys are on the left.
Yeah.
And they would come in, and I would just say, you know, why? What is it besides your bosses telling you this is the way we want you to vote?
Mm-hmm.
Because I could show them years after years unemployment amongst unions, how the left, when they're in office, there's more unemployment. It's unbelievable, the difference in the numbers.
Mm-hmm.
And you can't make a headway with them. The same way, you know, I try to talk to friends who are minorities. They vote against their own best interests. It's like you just can't make a headway with them. And today they've got our country so divided that it's really sad. And when you think about your children and grandchildren, the price they're going to pay for some of these decisions, it's
That
just
are made today. Yep. That's correct. It's just I don't know when it's going to end, if it ever will.
Paul, let me add something.
Yeah.
Your son running a very good and large hardware store. Has he?
Tell them the truth.
It's our son and daughter.
And daughter.
Uh,
Oh, yeah. She's like the chief financial officer.
well,
She does a lot in the back room that people don't know.
how are they doing in this climate, keeping help on?
Well, when COVID first hit, they were going gangbusters because they were the only ones that had masks and sanitizers. They did very, very well. And yeah, they lost help, but they have about, I'm going to guess, maybe 6 full-time people, but about 15 part-time. They have a big following of people that come in and want a part-time job and work in a hardware store. And he has a couple. He's got a guy, Marine Corps, and he's got another one from the Army, and he's a Vietnam vet, and another one I can't think of what he served, but they're all part-time, and that's what they want. They come to him and they said, I retired 4 years ago. I got to get out of the house. Do you have a job for me? Yep. And he pays them a decent salary, and he has, they have raised their salary level because of competition and so forth.
And but the minimum wage now is, I think January it's going to be up to $14 an hour.
Yeah, they're paying 15 to start,
Wow.
so everybody else gets more money. But he's always pumping away help wanted signs, Facebook, Instagram, all those. He's big on that. He does that, and my daughter takes care of the back office. So, but they're doing well, So, and they're third generation, and we're not sure if we're going to have a fourth generation because all our grandkids now are college graduates, and they're all employed somewhere other than the hardware store.
Well, we are hoping for one.
Yes, we are. We're hoping for one of the sons might show some interest.
But anything else? Every once in a while, like during our events at the Legion, whether it's the spring barbecue or the ride for the vets, we, as a president, and I know Paul did it when he was president, Hutch did it, Davey Slack, me, and Tommy Dixon. We'd like to thank the wives for the support because I couldn't believe just how much time you could end up investing in doing that. And Paul did it for so many years with the Rolling Thunder.
Yep.
And then with the Legion Riders. How was it for you? Well, number one, you were one of the few that rode on the back for a long time. Also, you participated on it. But how is it for the wife of a vet who is so involved in advocating for his fellow veterans?
It's good. It's I always knew he loved his fellow vets. We get together with 3 other couples that he served with in Vietnam, and we spend time with them. They're from one guy's from Seattle, Washington, one's from Pittsburgh, one's from Alabama. We have the best time.
And one was from Columbus, Ohio, who passed away.
Yes, and he brought a Vietnamese girl home. He married,
Yeah.
and we have a wonderful time. And of course, every time they get together, the stories get better.
Now, is that the reunion that you do
Yes.
every year, Paul?
Yes, we haven't done it for, I think, 3 years now. COVID.
2 years.
2
now.
years. But look, see this text? That's my 3 guys. Every day we're texting each other, just having a good old time, busting each other's chops and so forth. And my one good friend Truman, he's laid up now in a hospital bed with sciatica.
He's from Seattle,
Seattle,
Washington.
and the other guy, Joe, is telling Truman to get this insert. The VA put an insert in his back that when the sciatica acts up, it shoots something into his nerve that helps relieve the pressure. So he's telling Truman via text, go to the VA and get this done. So, and Truman retired as a pilot from Alaskan Air. That's what he did all his life. And he, months ago, him and his buddy were taking a small plane out, and they flipped it in the woods. Flipped it over and it landed on trees. Just like that family recently flipped that plane, and
Right.
3 of them walked away. Unbelievable.
Oh, he said he hung there for 6 hours.
Paul,
Yeah.
how many years has it been since you actually gave up riding?
Oh, was last when? October?
Yeah.
So it's been
October.
almost a year. Do you feel better?
Oh,
since you,
yes. She said that the other day. My back doesn't hurt like it did. I could ride all day, but the next day it's like, oh my God, and then so she talked me into getting the vet. I didn't want to get the Corvette, but she talked me into it.
Yeah. I didn't have to do too much talking.
But I still miss it. I miss the camaraderie of the ride and so forth. And it seems like when you're on the motorcycle, you're more apt to do an event. So now I'm trying to get back into that,
all right.
So, and let's face it, there's more and more guys showing up in cars and trucks now because they have medical issues. As we get older, it's going to happen. So,
Yeah, I know that the executive board's trying to do some things to solidify that
Yeah.
in our group. It's really unbelievable how many people are on sick call now.
yeah.
What was interesting, though, we did that funeral for Trish Brown,
Right.
and it was great to see Guy out.
Yeah.
It's got to have been over a year since he was able to participate. Here's a guy who's been dealing with 4th stage cancers for 4 or 5
Yeah.
years also.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think he's been around like 3 or 4 years, hasn't he?
Yep.
So.
Yeah. So we're going to wind things down here. I know personally, Paul, it's been a pleasure, this friendship, and it's no fun from once you leave the area. There's not too many guys left that have knowledge of what went on in the early years of Legion Riders and Rolling Thunder. It's always good to know that if there's a question about something, you're available.
I'm there.
Let me ask something about people talk about Florida and the VA down there. Is it really that much better than up here?
I think so, and I tell people, Bob Furlow and Steve were great, but they're so overworked. They need more staff, and they don't. And the state of New Jersey doesn't offer that. Where in Florida, when you go into the VA clinic there's 5 people behind the desk taking phone calls. Oh, what's your problem? And all of them are vets. What's your problem? What do you need? Okay, and then I can get you an appointment here or there, And one day I woke up, I had all red spots all over me. Remember that? And I called up and I says, I got these red spots. Come right in. I went right in, and they took me in, and the nurse had this camera, and she took shots of these red spots, sent it up to dermatology, which is about 30 or 40 miles away. They called back, and you said, oh, you have Graves' disease. What? So they said, okay, we're going to get you medication. Well, within 2 days, here's a tube of stuff that I had to.
Wow.
It wasn't anything serious, but it was like bing, bam, boom. If you need something, you're going to get it. But if you need a regular medical checkup, which is I get it once a year from the VA and once a year from Medicare, and that way I'm keeping both my requirements up.
Right.
So all's good. So
Now, if you need something while you're here, is it a problem because you're in the VA system down there, or?
well, I've never needed anything here, and the other thing is I have good insurance with Medicare and my supplement.
Okay.
So I use them basically first, and I, knock on wood, I haven't had any of the effects of Agent Orange, although they say that it's in your cells and it could never release, or it could release in a heartbeat, and then you start having ailments.
The other sad thing about the Agent Orange deal is that it's now reaching into the second and third generation.
I heard that.
And we had guys on back when Bill and I were doing the show together. This guy's name was John Berry, United States Navy veteran. He actually
How do they spell that? B-E-R-R?
B-U-R-Y.
Oh, B-U-R, okay.
And he ended up passing away on New Year's Eve, probably 2018, 17 or 18. And I had him on the show. He and his wife came down here when I was at Stockton doing the show. And at that time, and it's still to this day, the second and third generation, you can't get any VA care. But they do recommend all Vietnam veterans make sure their children are aware,
Right.
so they can alert their general practitioner
Right.
of, something might come up.
Now, see, the thing which was different from me is, yes, we were in a compound that was sprayed to kill the vegetation, but it wasn't like the guys that were out in the field following the rivers that were sprayed, and then some of them I heard were actually sprayed while they were out there. That's altogether different. And you remember Agent Orange was invented by Admiral Zumwalt, who used it to spray the banks of the rivers to knock down vegetation. Well, Admiral Zumwalt's son eventually died of Agent Orange. I mean, it was so ironic, that his son would die of something he invented. And a lot of the loaders, and Benoit was a big staging point. A lot of those guys that were loading the planes with the Agent Orange, a lot of them died from Agent Orange. So let's hope it gets out of our system and never happens again.
58,000 plus names on the wall.
Yes.
And over 300,000 Vietnam veterans have succumbed to the effects of Agent Orange.
Yes. That we know of.
Before we close the show,
Yes.
Paul, every year when we went down to the wall, you made it a point. You had a friend of yours from
Right.
Egg Harbor City.
That's right. Richie.
Who was that, Paul?
His name was Richie Delarena from Egg Harbor City, New Jersey. And I went to I went all through grade school. He was younger than me. And he went in 1970. He went and joined, and he became an MP. And what happened is his compound was mortared, and of course the MPs get everybody into the bunker. He was last, and a mortar came down and killed him instantly. And it was a sad day because he was a great guy. Oh, but I want to tell you this real quick, because you said about the VA in Florida and New Jersey. Before COVID, if I wanted to ride up maybe 40 miles up to Cape Coral Bay Pines Hospital, and I had something going on with my eyes or hearing, I could take a number, like at the at the meat counter, where you take a number and wait till my number was called, and they would take me that day. But they had to do away with it because of COVID. So hopefully, and that was the difference. That whoever heard of that, I can just drive up there, and if I'm willing to wait an hour or two, an eye doctor is going to look at me, or a hearing doctor. That was unheard of, but COVID knocked that out. So,
You know, it's interesting because I had a Vietnam veteran on the show a few times. He actually met him when I was at the Vietnam Wall with Commander Butler. We were doing interviews down there, and we had Joe Nichols and Mario Perucci was doing the show for us. And his name's Don Ackerman.
mm-hmm.
If he would wear the kilt.
Okay.
Well, Don's been up here a few times, and you know, I can remember back in the days when April Kaufman was doing a lot of veterans advocate work, and we upset that our World War II and Korean War veterans were taking a bus 90 minutes to Wilmington
That's
or Philly.
right. Yep, I remember that. Yeah.
And Don comes on, and he's from South Dakota, and they go 4 hours to a facility. It's amazing.
Well, you know, I heard they did away with the choice program. That's the one where guys wouldn't have to go, except in rural areas, because a guy could live on this side of the mountain, and the VA is this side of the mountain, but it's only 20 miles. So he's still eligible for the choice program. I mean, you know, now of course Furlough would know what's going on with that. But
well, we've only got a few seconds left, and as
anything
we
you want
say,
to say, Hunt, about?
anybody have a last word that they'd like to?
Well, my last word is my mother taught her to make the best meatballs in all of maybe the world. I don't know, but
Are you
people rage?
You know, you and Butler are always going back and forth about gravy and sauce.
Oh my God!
I'm a sauce guy.
Yes,
What are you?
Sauce.
sauce. Oh yeah. Well,
We just were in Italy. And
twice in Italy, and I asked that question, and
in
they
Italy,
laughed.
they call it sauce.
It's
we were there
sauce.
last week.
You put meat in it, it's called ragu or bolognese. But here they say, oh, you put meat in the sauce, it's gravy. No, that's an Irish thing.
Yeah, I don't. Gravy you put on your mashed potatoes.
That's right.
Gravy's brown.
Yeah.
Well, as we like to say at the end of every show, if you love your freedom, thank a vet.